Well, hello there and welcome back to part 3 of our web services tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to be working on the deserializer. Remember, in part 2 we talked about deserializing the weather object and extracting the information from the SOAP service, from the response that we get back from the SOAP service into our custom object. So let's get on with the coding. First thing we're going to need to do is to create our custom object. So we go over to our solutions window, right click on the project, add a class. We'll call this class cities, and then within this class we want to create the custom objects. To do this, we first need to run our application. Remember, put a breakpoint on the closing curlies of the constructor. Go up to cities here, to the property cities, and then hover over it, pop the spyglass down, click on the text visualizer. In the values that pop up, select all of the text in the value window. Control C to copy that, then close it down. Stop your application, go back to your new class, and then go edit, paste special, paste XML as classes, and that will create the required custom objects and properties for us to deserialize our SOAP object into. Here we have two new classes that have been created, one called the dataset and one called the dataset table. Okay, so inside the dataset up here we have an array of tables. New dataset table type, which is declared down here, and within here you see we've got two new fields, one for country, one for city, and just below that we actually have the properties which we use to populate these fields. So save that, close that down, and then start creating our deserialization code. So first thing we do is create the deserialization object known as the XML serializer. We currently have not include references to this within our project, so we just click on the object name, go down here to our little pop down and select using system XML serialization. You'll now see that these objects are valid. Result is obviously the field that we're going to be assigning this deserialized object to, and the parameter that we pass into the serializer object is a type of, which is basically just telling the object that the type is of new dataset, which is contained within the cities class. Okay, so remember, in our custom object we had a cities class, and within there we had the new dataset object and the new dataset table objects. So there's the new dataset object. Very simple, very straightforward. The next thing we need to do is to serialize or deserialize the SOAP object that we just read back from our get cities by country field here, cities. So we're actually going to pass cities into the deserialization method. Okay, so we've got a few underscores here. CN is obviously the field that we haven't quite declared yet, so we need to declare that. I am going to declare that on the top of the constructor here, but within inside our forms class, visible only to within this namespace, and of type dataset, and we are going to call it CN. CN equals type new dataset. Result is our serializer. Within the serializer we are looking for the deserialize method, and we are passing into the deserialize method a new string reader object which has not been defined yet. So again, pop our little drop down and say using system IO, so we can now use a string reader. The reason why we're using a string reader, of course, is that cities that got read back from the web services is actually a text field. It's actually text or string, so we will be reading that as a string using string readers, and deserialization object will obviously see that as a string and hopefully deserialize that into a new dataset object, and we are going to reference that with the CN field type. That should be it. So let's run it and see what happens and make sure we have no problems. Hopefully we'll hit our breakpoint. No, we have not hit our breakpoint, so we have an unhandled exception of type system. Invalid operations occurred in the system. Additional information: whether service.cities is inaccessible due to its protection level. Well, this is a very easy fix. Let's stop the thing running. Basically what's happened here, we've created a new custom class called cities. When you create a new class, it defaults to private. So we need to declare this as a public class. Save this, get rid of this, rerun the project. And there we go, we've successfully hit our breakpoint. So now if we go up to CN, drop down, have a little look, we'll see that we have now got a list of tables. We pop this down, and inside each table you'll see we've got a country and a city. Exactly what we're after. Incidentally, if you look at the autos down here, you can still see your locals, so you can see CN this way as well. So you got table, and then within table, as you can see, you have your cities and your countries. So that worked exactly as expected, which is not always the way. So the last thing that we need to do within the constructor is to populate the countries dialog box. Okay, so to do that, we are going to use a .NET feature called link, and here we have the query. So var type variant, and field title is country. So we're actually looking at extracting the countries from our serialized object. Note inside the serialized object we had countries and cities. Well, at the moment we're not interested in the cities, we just want to extract the countries and put these countries in our combo box. Okay, so to do that we are going to use the CN object that we just deserialized into. We are going to be looking into the tables within that object, and we are going to be selecting the countries only. Okay, so this is known as a lambda expression, where m goes to m.country, and we want to select the distinct countries, which basically means one of each type. So instead of selecting the 15 Canadas that were available within inside our deserialized object, we don't want to put 15 Canadas and 27 United Kingdoms and so on and so forth in our dialog box. We just want one of each country type. So that's what distinct function actually does for us. Okay, if we run the application again, go down to countries and hover over that, you'll see in the results view now that we have a distinct list of countries. Beautiful, just right for putting into our dialog box. Okay, so stop the application, put in a new line, and then just fill in the combo. So let's copy that. Here we go. So remember, we called our combo box country. We want to add the items to combo box country, and we have got a typo in here somewhere. So let's go back to the forms, see what we actually called our combo box. Properties, design, name, combo box countries. Zoop. There we go. Get the right name. Incidentally, the reason why you saw the typographical there is that I've already created a version of this application to as a proof of concept, and I'm obviously using some subtly different naming conventions in the second version, and also I don't want to sit down and have to type all this code out, which will take forever. It's quicker and more simpler for me just to copy, paste and explain, so I hope you don't mind. Anyway, there we go. So let's run this. Let's remove this breakpoint and execute the application. Execute. Right, here we have the window, and if we pop down the countries, we should see our countries. So that worked wonderfully. As expected, There's no point selecting a country, nothing's going to happen because we haven't implemented the code yet, and as you can see, cities doesn't exist. So the next task is to populate cities upon the selection of a country. Now this is going to be very, very simple. In fact, so simple it's going to be a case of really just copying the code here for extracting countries and putting it into the combo box. We're going to be extracting the cities and putting it into the cities combo box on the selection changed event for the countries combo. Okay, so let's do that. So first thing we do is go to the design panel, select the countries dialog box, go over here to the properties window for the dialog box, select on our little lightning icon here. You'll notice we've got selected index changed already selected by default. Double click that and that will create an event for you. So every time that dialog element changes, when somebody selects a new item or element within that dialog box, it will fire this event and call the code within this method. Okay, and inside here I am just going to copy and paste the code from my previous example that I ran, and again we've got some typos. That's because this is, remember we changed this to combo box countries. Okay, and we're going to have the same issue here. I think this is probably going to be cities. Yes, there we go. So as you can see, this line here is exactly the same to all intents and purposes as this line here. So we are going to our deserialized object to the tables, and we are selecting where m goes to country is equal to the combo box.text. So basically combo box.text is the text that's been selected in the country combo box. So if you select Canada, text is equal to Canada. If Canada equals country inside the table, then select the city for that country, and this will return all the cities for the selected country. That will be contained within the RR object. Don't ask me why I called it RR. Anyway, first thing we need to do is obviously clear the cities combo box, because if you've already selected a country and populated the combo box, then you're obviously going to be appending new cities to the old cities. You don't want to do that. So you want to clear the combo box first, and then you want to add a range of items. So it's combo box.items.add a range. The range being the range of cities that we've brought back from our query up here. And in order for it to be compatible with the combo box city items, you need to convert to an array. Okay, so you would just dot and then select array within this list. Okay, that's it, as simple as that. So now when we run this, you'll see that we've got the two dialog boxes populated. And yes, it has popped up, but it's popping up on my second monitor. So there you go. So we pick a Canada, pick a country called Canada, and hopefully we will now have populated our cities list box. There you go. So these are all the cities, airfields within Canada. Selected the airport. The next thing to do now obviously is to go and do a query on the web service and bring the weather data back for the selected or chosen city. Okay, so we shall now do that. Okay, so the principle behind this is very, very similar to the principle we employed already up here in the constructor for retrieving the countries and the cities from the web service. We are going to basically copy this code and place this into the forms event over here for cities. Okay, so we'll select the cities combo box, go back over to your properties for the combo box, select the little bolt of lightning, go to the selected index changed event, double click it. Okay, that creates our selected index changed event within the code, and in here we are just going to basically copy some code from my original example, and you will see why I'm not going to go through and retype all this, because it's pretty much identical to what we've already done up here. You can see we are creating the basic binding exactly as we did before. The reason why we're recreating it for is that we don't want to keep the endpoint open. Once you've done with it, we close it, and we'll just reopen it and do a query on the web service whenever we require an update. Again, the endpoint address is exactly the same. We could have actually probably created the binding and the endpoint outside of these methods in the main class for form weather, but we didn't. And again, the global weather soap client. So these 3 lines are absolutely identical to the original 3 lines here. Down here, we go and get the weather. Okay, now that's different to the previous line up here where we actually got cities. Okay, so here we're actually getting the weather, and the get weather method within the web service requires 2 parameters. It requires a city and a country, and as already mentioned earlier, we've got a typo in our combo box names for the cities and the countries, so we basically need to just rename these accordingly. So city and cities. And I can't spell. Cities, current weather. Okay, so rich text box 1. Click rich text box 1. We've actually called this weather details. So rich text box 1. Weather details. Okay, double click that. Control C, Control V, Control V. And current weather object. So if you remember, we had to create a custom object up here for the deserialization of the cities. Well, we have to do exactly the same thing again for the weather. So if you can remember, we had to execute the application, go to our watch screen and copy the XML data from the feed, and then we pasted that as an XML using the edit paste special XML as a class into a newly created class. So we will do that here. Let's just comment out some of this code at the moment, because obviously we have an issue here where we can't find some class types, okay, which we're just about to create. And then again, we'll do the same thing here. This will allow us to at least execute the program. So we will put a breakpoint on here, press start, get the program running. Go to our countries, select a country, go to our cities, select a city. Okay, hit the breakpoint, go up to weather. Weather has now been populated with the response data from the web service. Click down the mag glass, select text visualizer, and here's your weather information. So select all of that up to country. Don't select the XML bit right at the beginning. You just want the current weather tag, current weather. Control C to copy that and close. Stop the application. Go back over to your Solutions Explorer, to the project, right click project and add a new class. So add class, and we'll call this one, what was it expecting? It was expecting weather. Then in here we will just do an edit, and then we will do a paste special and paste XML as classes, and then there you will see the newly created weather object. And inside here we have a class called current weather, and we have an enumerator which will give us the titles. So let's close that, save that. Yeah. And the current weather object is not the correct name, so click on weather. It's called weather. So get rid of current there and there, and then we have the W, so we need to do W dot, no we don't, what's going on here? So I see what's going on. We have a typo, no we do, no we don't. Okay, so we cannot see into our object. Why not? Why not? Whether let's make it public. That might help. Save that. Go back to forms. w dot. What the fuck? I think I understand. Weather, we are actually inside a class called weather with current weather, so back to form 1, and we need to prefix current weather with weather. Of course we do. There we go. There we go. Okay. Oh. So everything seems to be okay. So we have our bindings to our endpoint. We have our method call which retrieves the weather information. We have a little check to see whether the data has been found. Now some of these cities do not have weather data. Instead of returning weather data, they will return a string stating data not found. So we check for that string, and if it's not there, we know we have some data, in which case we can go off and process the weather information. So this line obviously clears the rich text box from any previous weather data. These two lines here do exactly the same as these two lines did, which is deserialize the weather object into W, and then we actually iterate over the weather object. So if you look in here, you will see that we actually have some items, and the items are obviously the items for the weather, and we have the such as temperature and humidity, and then we actually have the items elements names. Okay, and you can see that by looking at the actual deserialized weather object here. Look, we have items, and then we have the item names as an enum. Look, okay, so these are the item names, and then these are the actual items proper, i.e. the values for those item names. So what we need to do is we need to loop over each of those items and append the item name and the item data or value. So for each of the items inside of the or each of the elements inside the elements array, loop and append to the rich text box dot text the element name and then the value, and we index this with an I. Okay, so we will get each unique element name and each unique element value appended, and then we will append an character return and a new line to the end of that. Or else, if we do find some data that's not found, we'll just clear the text box and we will replace the data in there with data not found. Straightforward. So let's run it and see if it works. So let's pick a country. Let's pick my homeland, United Kingdom, and let's pick Halfpenny Green, and see, we get data not found. Let's have a look at Manchester Barton. Data not found. That's a good start. Kemble. Data not found. Luton Airport. There you go. Currently at Luton Airport, the time is August the 8th, 2015, 20 past 4 p.m. Somehow, I doubt that. Well, that's EDT time. 2020. That's not. Oh, UTC. Wind is blowing southeast at 130 degrees, 7 miles per hour. Visibility is greater than 7 miles. Temperature 64 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius. Dew point is 53 Fahrenheit, 12 CE. Relative humidity 67%, and the pressure 30.18 inches or 1022 HPA. And the status for the request was a success. So that, my friends, is the end of the tutorial. Hope you learned something from it. Sorry if you don't think I went into enough detail, and I'm very happy if you think I went into more than enough detail, and you did actually take something away from this. That was great, and that's the intention of the tutorials. More of a demonstration, show you how to do things, and a walkthrough. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you on some future tutorials at some point. So until that time, look after yourself, stay safe, and see you then. Bye for now.